Uncle Owen's barbecue.
Unlike the Luke we see in The Rise of Skywalker, spending his days drinking blue milk and listening to Simple Plan, barely caring about his friends, family, legacy, or the future of the galaxy, the Luke from A New Hope was a completely different character. He actually dreamed of making a difference and had no fear of picking a fight with the Empire. Even as an untrained farmer, he had courage and determination. And the only reason he didn't join the Rebel Alliance earlier was because his uncle needed cheap labor. But in the end, the Empire helped free the young man from his terrible working conditions and pushed him to follow his dreams. No more obligations. No more next season. No more guilt about leaving. The Empire accidentally removed every single reason Luke had to stay on Tatooine and set him on the path that would eventually destroy them. The Emperor's obsession with showing how evil he was often got in the way of actually winning and ruling the galaxy. Old Palpie loved bragging about his ancient Sith knowledge, but apparently he never read Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, or even a beginner's management guide. He missed the perfect opportunity to stay in his lane and avoid creating a mortal enemy.
Jar Jar builds the Empire.
It's episode 2. Padme is a senator now, and things are getting dangerous. There have been assassination attempts, so she goes into hiding on Naboo. Makes sense. Reasonable choice. Now, before she leaves, she needs someone to represent her in the Senate. Someone trustworthy, someone capable, someone with political experience and good judgment. She picks Jar Jar Binks. Honestly, unlike a lot of people, I'm not a Jar Jar hater. I've been a fan of him since Barcelona, and I still believe in his return as the greatest Sith Lord in the galaxy. But trusting major political decisions during a critical moment to a guy who gets beaten up by a parked pod racer and can be manipulated by Jedi mind tricks doesn't seem very wise to me.
And that disastrous decision ended up being crucial in allowing the Chancellor to receive emergency powers from the Senate, something that became essential to his rise in power and eventual ascent as Emperor of the Galaxy.
Anakin tells Mace Windu about Palpie's little secret. Episode 3. Anakin has just found out that his old friend Chancellor Palpatine is actually Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord the Jedi have been hunting for over a decade. He goes straight to Mace Windu and tells him. Windu takes a small team to arrest Palpatine. They fight. Palpatine kills 3 masters instantly. Windu gets the upper hand, has Palpatine defeated, disarmed, on his knees. And then, Anakin cuts off Windu's hand. Palpatine throws him out the window, and that's it. The point of no return. But here's what I keep thinking about. Mace Windu is, by most accounts, the most powerful Jedi fighter in the Order. He created his own lightsaber combat form, Vapad, specifically designed to use the enemy's own darkness against them. If Anakin had never revealed Sidious's identity to Windu, several possible scenarios could have unfolded. Anakin's fall to the dark side might never have happened, since the urgency to save the Sith in order to protect the supposed secret of creating life would not have been weighing so heavily on the conflicted Skywalker's mind. Or maybe
Anakin would have fallen anyway, and eventually killed Windu during the Purge regardless, but this time in a fair one-on-one duel against Vader.
Or even
Order 66 would still have happened normally, but Windu might have escaped and joined Yoda and Obi-Wan. This third scenario raises many questions. Would Windu have joined Yoda in fighting the Emperor together? Could they have defeated the Sith Lord? Would they have managed to save more Jedi from the Purge? Anakin's seemingly noble decision to share the secret with his master ultimately triggers a catastrophic chain of events for the entire galaxy, and things could have gone in a very different direction from that point.
Qui-Gon lands on the wrong planet.
Episode 1. Qui-Gon Jinn is escorting Queen Amidala from Naboo to Coruscant. Simple mission. Straightforward route. And then their ship takes damage escaping the Trade Federation blockade, and they need to make an emergency stop for parts. They land on Tatooine. It was the closest planet outside Republic space where they could find what they needed without attracting attention from the Separatists, since the Hutts were not looking for them. And in a random junkyard run by a random Toydarian, Qui-Gon meets 9-year-old slave Anakin Skywalker. Let's be honest, there was never any guarantee that Anakin would remain undiscovered forever. With his absurd midichlorian count, he could easily have been found by other Force users, including the Sith. A lot of people believe Qui-Gon brought ruin to the Jedi Order. But what if Palpatine had found Anakin first? What if the boy had been trained in the dark side of the Force from the very beginning? I can imagine a far worse scenario, one where Vader had no weaknesses and no mercy. Not to mention that Anakin played a crucial role in liberating Naboo by destroying the Separatist control ship and causing the entire droid army to collapse. Without Anakin's help, Obi-Wan and Padme could have been executed by the Separatists, even with Darth Maul defeated. Ahsoka's training would have taken a completely different path. The Clone Wars would have unfolded differently as well, and not necessarily for the better, as we usually like to imagine.
Are you an angel? Seriously? The kid is 9 years old and already drops a line like that on the hottest queen senator in the galaxy? And somehow it works. Anakin's unmatched game was both the spark that led to his downfall and tragedy, and the very reason Luke and Leia even existed. If he hadn't been so smooth with words, and if Padme cared a little more about age gaps and war crimes, the galaxy might have had a very different ending. But she's charmed, and that charm plants a seed. And 10 years later, when she sees him again, now grown, now a Jedi, now deeply uncomfortable around sand, she remembers that kid, and something's already there. What follows is a forbidden relationship, a secret marriage, 2 children, and the complete emotional destruction of Anakin Skywalker when he becomes convinced she's going to die. Padme's death, or rather, Anakin's obsessive fear of it, is the central engine of his fall. His love for her is what Palpatine weaponizes. His desperation to save her is why he kneels. Would Palpatine be able to manipulate Anakin if he was rejected by his crush? Or rejection would make him fall even faster?
Qui-Gon's demise on Naboo.
We're going back to Qui-Gon, because he might be the single character whose absence reshapes the most history. Qui-Gon Jinn gets killed by Darth Maul at the end of Episode 1, and in the moment, it feels like a tragic but contained loss. One Jedi falls, Obi-Wan defeats Maul, the battle is won. But pull back and look at what that one death actually costs. First, Anakin. Qui-Gon was supposed to train him, and Qui-Gon was different from the other Jedi, more paternal, more intuitive, less obsessed with the code, and more focused on the living Force. He bent rules when they needed bending. He saw people, really saw them, not just their potential. Could Qui-Gon have trained Anakin in a way that Obi-Wan simply couldn't? Almost certainly yes. Obi-Wan did his best and deeply loved Anakin, but his training was rigid where Anakin needed flexibility, distant where Anakin needed warmth. He was a good teacher, but not the ideal one to deal with Ani's complexity. They fought like brothers because the Master Kenobi could never truly be empathetic enough toward the boy. A more patient hand, a wiser guide, a father figure who wouldn't have dismissed Anakin's fears, he would have sat with them. Anakin might have become exactly what the prophecy promised, a Jedi who brought genuine balance, not through destruction, through understanding. Second, Dooku. Count Dooku was Qui-Gon's former master, and Qui-Gon's death broke something in him. The Jedi Order's failure to prevent it, the politics, the corruption, Dooku had already been drifting, but losing his former Padawan pushed him over the edge. Qui-Gon survives? Maybe Dooku never becomes Darth Tyrannus. Maybe the Separatist movement never has its leader. Maybe the Clone Wars don't happen the way they did, or at all. And third, Obi-Wan. He only becomes a Jedi Knight because Qui-Gon dies and he makes a deathbed promise to train Anakin. He wasn't ready. He knew it. The Council knew it. But grief and a promise don't care about readiness. Certainly, Qui-Gon's demise was a game changer for the galaxy.
C-3PO saves the galaxy. Final one. And it might be the most chaotic win in the history of military strategy. Return of the Jedi. The plan to destroy the second Death Star requires shutting down the shield generator on the forest moon of Endor. Simple enough in theory. In practice,
Han, Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, and a small team are massively outnumbered by Imperial forces protecting the base. And before they can even get to the Empire, they nearly get eaten by Ewoks, the Ewoks. Small, fuzzy, tribal warriors who have never seen a blaster capture the entire crew and are about to cook Han and Luke for what appears to be a religious feast. Now, a normal military operation at this point is over. You're captured, your dinner, the Death Star stays online, the rebellion dies. But then, the Ewoks see C-3PO. A golden, shiny, humanoid figure that speaks their language, and to the Ewoks, this is obviously a god. C-3PO tells them a story. The Ewoks not only release everyone, they join the fight. Hundreds of Ewoks with rocks, logs, and arrows versus Imperial stormtroopers. And against all probability, it works. The shield goes down. The Rebel fleet destroys the Death Star. Palpatine dies. The Empire collapses. The galaxy was saved because a protocol droid built to be annoying at diplomatic functions happened to be shiny enough to be worshipped. C-3PO spent 6 films being told he was useless and in the way. And then, he accidentally became a god and ended the war once and for all.
Until Palpatine somehow returns.
That's the thing about butterfly effects. They don't announce themselves. They're just a moment, a choice, a random piece of luck that tips everything sideways. Which butterfly effect hit you the hardest? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Your support means a lot to us. May the Force be with you. And may your senator never delegate to Jar Jar.